Well, hello and welcome everyone to this first installment of Inside the Oak Park River Forest Museum. I'm Peggy Tuxenko. It's my honor to serve as museum board president. And as we look for new ways to keep in touch with you, our members and friends, we thought you might enjoy a virtual peek inside our walls. So we hope to bring you an occasional and brief look at some of the objects in the collection, the activities and research that take place here every day. These free Zoom meetings will last approximately 20 or 30 minutes, so think of it as a midday snack, an appetizer that can provide you with a break from your regular activities, something that will hold you over for the main course. And before we begin, I do want to just put in a plug for our next upcoming program, a virtual program, and that is on Saturday, December 5th. Leslie Goddard will be presenting her program, Marshall Fields at Christmas. And those of you, and I know many of you have seen other presentations by Leslie. She is not only a first-rate historian, but a great presenter. And we know this is something that will definitely kind of put you in the holiday spirit. You can go online to the museum website to register. The cost is $10 for non-members, $7 for members. And that's on Saturday, December 5th at 3 o'clock. So be sure that you don't miss that. That's going to be a great presentation. So each one of our episodes will consist of 2 or 3 brief presentations. You, the viewers, will have a chance to use the chat function down at the bottom of the screen to ask questions. And this week, Rachel Berlinski, our operations manager, will share a few things from her a couple of favorites from hers from our newest first floor small case exhibit. I'll be back to highlight some items in our current Girl Scout exhibit. And then Frank Lipo will tell you the story of a box of mementos and the long, circuitous 100-year journey that brought them back to Oak Park. So sit back with your cup of tea or hot chocolate as we look inside the Oak Park River Forest Museum. And Rachel, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you all for coming today. So I have a slideshow, and I'm just going to share my screen to show you that. Hopefully it comes up in a moment. Okay, so today I will be talking about our newest case exhibit, which is called From Tintypes to JPEGs, A Brief History of Photographic Print. And I say brief because it's very hard to summarize 2 centuries of an art form into just a case, but we've done our best. So our exhibit here was curated by our former archivist, Elizabeth Nichols, and with the aid of our volunteer, John Elliott, who I think is on the call today. So, like I said, we wanted to summarize sort of the art form and the science of photography and look at different examples of these different types of photographs that we have in our collection. So we take you through, like I said, the last 2 centuries of printing photographs. And you can probably guess that for the earliest type of photograph, which would be, or the most earliest popular type of photograph would be a daguerreotype, which you may have heard of. But our archivist Elizabeth kind of had a hard time finding an example of one in our collection. So we were able to reach out to another person with the Historical Society named Marcia Palazzolo, who some of you may know because she was a longtime volunteer and board member with the Historical Society. And she was also, she's a former professor at Rosary College teaching photography. So her collection of these different types of photographs and her knowledge is really profound. So we reached out to her to see if we could find an actual daguerreotype to include in this exhibit. And she gave us this one, which she believes she found in an estate sale somewhere around Oak Park. But she doesn't know who the picture is of. And even so, I feel like I know this kid because the photograph itself is so lifelike. And that really speaks to the daguerreotype itself. It was a really fine process of taking photographs. And this would have been, this probably would have been taken somewhere between 1839 when Louis Daguerre first developed this process, up until they stopped sort of being widely used in the 1860s. And the reason it fell out of popularity is because it was very expensive and it was very hard to produce. But with that being said, this picture, like I said, is so lifelike. They are printed on a mirror, so you have to look at it in the right direction and the right way. But once you see the image, you can see the checkers on her dress. You can see the pigment in her face. It is so lifelike. However, with the complexity of the process, people tried very quickly to come up with a new or different process to make taking photographs easier and cheaper. And I think that's sort of a theme throughout history is how can we make something easier and cheaper? And we take you through some other examples of the different types of photographs that people came up with throughout, like once they started to take off from Daguerre's process up into today. And that is sort of where we leave the timeline of this exhibit, is taking it into the present and the future. The last piece in our exhibit is an iPhone, and even still, this is sort of an older iPhone, but we leave you with a bit of an existential question, which is, how are we going to preserve photographs in the future? Because even today, and as of the past maybe decade or so, just the art of printing a photograph has gone out of use. So it's really a question for us as historians, is how are we going to access and keep photographs for the next 2 centuries? So that's a little bit about our new case exhibit. I want to remind everybody that if you have some questions, you can put those in the chat box at any time, and we will probably go over questions at the end of today's program. But with that being said, I'd like to pass it over to Peggy.
Thanks, Rachel. As some of you may know, I am a lifelong and a lifetime member of the Girl Scouts, and it was a lot of fun to me for me to co-curate along with Rachel our exhibit First Girls, Trailblazing Girl Scouts in 1920s Oak Park and River Forest. The exhibit, which opened this summer, celebrates 100 years of Girl Scouting in our communities, beginning with the formation of Troop 1 in the summer and fall of 1920 and the growth of Girl Scouting in the 1920s. You can learn about Oak Park's first Girl Scout leader, who is also one of the few women whose names can be found on the World War I memorial in Scoville Park. Now you're going to have to, after we reopen, you're going to have to come back in to get the story of what she did to qualify her for inclusion on the War Memorial. And you will also be able to view excerpts, as you see here on our screen, from a 1919 Girl Scout promotional film, a silent film, which is believed to be the first such effort by a public service organization. But today I want to talk about three of my favorite objects from our camping section. Camping has always been an important part of Girl Scouting today, just as it was in the 1920s. And in fact, one of the first activities of Troop 1 was to go camping. Now, these objects in the camping exhibit, I think, will resonate with anyone who ever went away to a summer sleepaway camp, whether that was Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Y, a church camp, some other religious camp. And certainly, while camping equipment and some activities have changed, there is a certain universality about camp experiences that ring true today just as they did 90 plus years ago. So, one of the hallmarks of summer camp is, of course, swimming and water sports, whether it's in a lake, a stream, a pool. And a common sight at camp is a bathing suit hanging on the line. And this wool bathing suit is from the museum's collection. It probably dates from the late 1920s, and it was donated to the Historical Society in 1984. Now, my question is always when I see these wool bathing suits is, did they ever actually really dry out? Or did campers put on a cold, clammy suit every day? And I'm thinking that an awful lot of the time it was the latter. Now, I don't know if kids who go away to camp still write many letters or postcards. Maybe they send texts or Instagrams or whatever. But our exhibit includes 3 postcards that were sent from Camp Lone Tree in 1928 by Girl Scout Adele Fricke, who lived at 122 South Harvey, so not very far at all from the museum. Camp Lone Tree was the official Girl Scout camp for the greater Oak Park area. It was located in Southwest Michigan, and it opened in 1927. There was a hill with a single lone tree on top of it, hence the name. That name was later adopted by the Oak Park Area Council. The camp closed in the 1950s. Now, Adele, as we see her pictured here, was a camper at Camp Lone Tree that very first year that it opened, and she returned in 1928 and for several years thereafter to work on the camp staff. And one of her duties was serving as the camp bugler. And we do have snapshots of her bugling platform where she no doubt played reveille in the morning and taps in the evening. Now, postcards like this are interesting not only because in this case we get some actual views of the camp, but in a sense we get to eavesdrop, in this case, on a teenage girl. And again, there is kind of a universality about the contents. There's mentions about what she's doing. She says they may go horseback riding. I can tell you that Girl Scouts today still love to go horseback riding. And then there is a somewhat sort of gossipy, snide comment about a new group of girls who have arrived at camp. Now, while her handwriting is very clear, there's one word, and it's underlined here, she underlined it, that we can't quite make out. So if you have thoughts about what it is, let us know. She writes, "The new kids aren't so hot. They wear blank with knickers." Apparently some sort of fashion faux pas here. And finally, there's the mention of money. Now, campers are always writing about either please send money or thank you for sending money. And she no doubt needed money for the camp store to buy souvenirs, postcards, snacks, and so forth. And Adele writes, "Thanks, Dad, for the $2. I surely needed it." And she ends that postcard with, "Camp is wonderful. I'm so glad I'm here." A sentiment that I think many of us share about our own camp experiences. Finally, I just love this 1920s official Girl Scout camp uniform with its sailor style midi blouse, and you'll notice the badges sewn on the sleeve, the matching bloomers, and the official Girl Scout hat. The 1925 equipment catalog, Girl Scout equipment catalog, lists the prices as $1.75 for the blouse, $2.15 for the knickers, and $1.60 for the official khaki hat. The bloomers were described as roomy and comfortable for walking and camp wear. So our Girl Scout is now ready to tackle the out of doors. This uniform is on loan to the museum from the Council Historians affiliated with the Girl Scouts of Greater Chicago and Northwest Indiana. We thank them for this loan. There's also several other items that they own that they loaned to us, which you can also see when you come in to view the exhibit. And so with that, I'm going to turn this over to Frank for our final story today.
Thank you, Peggy. And can everyone hear me? Okay. I have the pleasure this morning to talk to you about something that both Rachel and Peggy have already been talking a little bit about, is our collection. Very specifically, even though we do borrow some items, as Peggy's just mentioned, since we were organized in 1968 and moved into Pleasant Home in 1970, we've been building a collection. Our museum, as visitors come to Oak Park River Forest Museum, they see a wide range of materials on display at any given time. And there are tens of thousands of other artifacts, photographs, and materials in storage. And we use those materials, of course, this collection to tell the story of Oak Park and River Forest. We have a written collection policy to guide what we collect. And we talk a lot about the sort of things that we need to collect now and into the future. We want to tell diverse stories, a range of stories, a lot of different people from different eras, so that we give a more full-fledged, sort of story of our community over time. But regardless of what we as staff members or board members or key volunteers do, we want to rely on you, on the public, to help tell these stories by sharing objects and materials in your collections at home, things from your family story, etc. And these days, and actually through the years, it often starts with a phone call, a letter, now an email, a text. Sometimes people leave a package on our door. Please leave your name if you leave a package on our door, by the way, with something that some people think is important for us to have. And these collection items that come to our collection often have spent decades in living rooms or basements or attics or a closet, maybe proudly displayed in the middle of a display case in your own home. But late this summer, I'm going to focus in on this box you see before you. A small package arrived in our post office box after a long journey. At quick glance, it looks like it might be sort of a little cigar box. It actually held fruit originally. Talks about the sweet fruits that's inside it. And it was donated by a stranger with no direct connection to Oak Park River Forest. And if I were to write the headline for this story, it would be "From River Forest to Lombard, to Baraboo, Wisconsin, to Arlington, Virginia, to Oak Park, Illinois." In essence, this box was given to us by the grandson of a man who found it at a yard sale, is the best we could figure out. Looking through the materials inside, we quickly realized they were assembled by Alan Ingalls, who was a 1920 graduate of Oak Park River Forest High School. His memorabilia, assembled as a River Forest resident and a student at the high school, came home again here to Oak Park exactly 100 years from his graduation, literally sort of almost to the day. As you can see here from these objects in that little box, there's sort of typical kind of high school memorabilia, a couple junior prom sort of bid books, tickets to some football games against Proviso, you see there right in the center, a ribbon from a competition, the kind of things that a lot of us might assemble from our high school careers, and maybe throw in a box and put in a drawer and pull out occasionally. But we have no idea where these materials were between 1920 and 1977, except we think that they stayed in Mr. Ingalls' possession, who remained a River Forest resident. But they show up, the last time we can kind of trace them is 1977, when Roy Green in Baraboo, Wisconsin died. And his grandson was helping clean out the house, and he thought that this was maybe from when his grandfather lived in Lombard in the 1960s. He was known to be an enthusiast of yard sales and estate sales. And we think that he perhaps, when Alan Ingalls died in 1965, he might have got it at some sort of estate sale and then moved to Baraboo, Wisconsin. And the family thought this was a cool little box and kept it. His grandson, who lives in Arlington, Virginia, mailed it to us, mailed this box with these materials this summer, as I mentioned earlier. So literally, we talk sometimes about things in our storage. These items were 40 years after Roy Green's death, were in storage within the family. So what do we know about these items and about Alan Ingalls? And if you, a little bit of research on our collection, and some of you maybe have heard of the Ingalls house. It's a Frank Lloyd Wright designed home in River Forest. This is a photograph as an adult, Alan Ingalls, and the correct spelling is A-L-L-I-N. In 1909, his folks had Frank Lloyd Wright design this house. And so graduating in 1920, he would have grown up a big chunk of his childhood living in this home. It's a little time capsule that of itself tells the story of a high school experience in 1920. But the interesting thing about our collection is the other materials we have and other sort of resources outside our institution we can check into. So looking into Alan Ingalls, we realized that Alan, who grew up at 562 Keystone, which is this Ingalls house, he died in 1965, and his obituary talks about his career returning to River Forest after attending University of Chicago. He ended up dying from the home at 1144 Keystone, and he had an incredibly rich life of community involvement. He died after about 10 years of being the chairman of Avenue State Bank, the bank building there at the corner of Oak Park Avenue and the train tracks. He founded a refrigerated train car company as a younger man and eventually was bought by a larger company. He served on the River Forest Library Board. He served as the director of the Oak Park River Forest YMCA. He was a director of the Presbyterian St. Luke's Hospital and of Beloit College. So he's a guy that, we just have this little brief amount of material from his high school years, but he was a very involved citizen, I think, in our community and came back to River Forest after going to University of Chicago. And then the next slide, you'll see here a little bit more about these items, just to kind of drill down. And I just love, I won't bother reading these, but I love the types of the dances and the X's and even the names of some of the people he danced with. So we could pull out our 1920 yearbook from our collection and look at some of these names and who we can trace his whole junior prom from 1919. The other thing about, of course, looking more into his life, I was able to stumble across a 1950s article in the Chicago Tribune that the family still owned the house up until at least the 1950s, this Frank Lloyd Wright designed house from 1909. And they rented it out to two sisters, Jeanette and Florence McGowan, who were teachers at Oak Park River Forest High School. And they told this story in this article about Frank Lloyd Wright houses in the 1950s, that Wright stopped in one time and was really happy with the way they decorated the house, except they had too much Victorian furniture. It took up too much space. And they actually said, he's right. We got rid of some of that furniture. So you have these bits and pieces, this one man's high school experience, and how it also has insight into other stories in our community. And that's the great thing about things that are given to our collection. We have a chance to kind of broaden the story. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see here, there is Allen Ingalls as a senior in his 1920 yearbook. And if you notice all the things he was involved in, the standard, saying what year and what club and organization. And the thing I didn't get out of this until seeing this is his sense of humor. He has this little smile on his face here. And so again, piecing together to tell a story. And you could see he was just as active in high school as he was as an adult in our community, very involved in a lot of different things. I kind of was saying to myself as I was looking at all these materials, is this is a little time capsule, an old-fashioned time capsule that was given to us. But literally 100 years ago, before anybody had heard of Zoom or remote learning, his class had the chance to graduate in-person graduation, unlike the class of 2020. So a little poignancy here receiving these materials. So that's an insight into just one small little box of materials given to us. And that's the kind of work we like to do over time, is to kind of delve into those stories. At this point, I'd like to invite you all, I know some of you already received emails from the Historical Society, or if you haven't done that, you can sign up for that. As you may know, last Friday, the governor asked all inside museums in the state of Illinois to shut down to stop the spread or to slow the spread of COVID-19. But we're still open. Staff is here, sometimes working from home, sometimes here. We're trying to answer questions. Our website has such richness of material. Look through our website. Consider buying something from our gift store. Just use our website as a means to keep in touch. With that, I just want to say to all of you, thanks so much for coming today. As you see up on the screen, any chat box comments that maybe refer to one of our presentations in the last few minutes here. And thank you so much for your time today.
So I will take over from here because I am looking at the chat box and we have 5 minutes left. So if anybody else has questions to add, please do. But there's two main points in the chat box right now. One of them is people are thinking that the word in Adele's postcard is beads, so B-E-A-D-S, and that was also something that we had thought it would say. But what does that mean? That's still my question to you, Peggy, is what could that look like?
Well, several people, am I on? I'm on now, yeah. Several people have also suggested that the word is beads, which it may be. I don't know what that means. They were wearing beads with their knickers. But it's just, but I think perhaps that is what it is. We just don't quite understand what it means.
I also see the comment about Chicago. Allen Ingalls did attend the University of Chicago. That is the, that's what, when they have the name underneath, it's typically the college that they were supposed to go to, that they had said they were going to. Sometimes, of course, they ended up not attending that college or whatever at the last minute, but yes, he did attend University of Chicago.
And there's also another question that I would like to address, and probably the three speakers today can talk about this. The question is, will we be leaving these exhibits up until any certain amount of time? And for me, I would like to say that we are sort of playing things by ear at the moment, especially with trying to follow the state guidelines and seeing how long that ends up lasting. But we will definitely intend to keep these things on display until people get enough of a chance to see them, whenever that may be.
Yeah, I would echo that. You know, we want people to be able to see the exhibits, and particularly with the Girl Scouts, they haven't been able to do field trips. So as like Rachel said, we're kind of playing it by ear, but it's going to be up. It's going to be up for a reasonable amount of time to give everyone a chance to see it.
And as far as my portion, those have never been on display. They literally came in this summer, and we just sort of have them in the collection now. That's the other great thing about, besides the actual exhibits we have up, as people do research, if somebody was researching the high school, we of course have a lot of other material about the high school, not just the yearbooks. So this tells the story of ALLIN INGALLS somewhat, but also anybody from that era, or looking at how high school kids, you know, sort of the memorabilia they kind of assembled as juniors and seniors in high school in this case. So yeah, it's these things are accessible for you as members of the community. You know, can ask us about as you do research on topics that we can pull material like this from for you.
We hope to bring you another episode next month, so look for that. And if you have suggestions of something you're curious about, please let us know. We would love to have people actually be presenters. We know a lot of you have maybe stumbled across or done some research or familiar with something, and you could just give that little you know, as we're calling it, that kind of hors d'oeuvre sense of, so people can get a sense of some of the wonderful things that we have here.
All right. And with that, I think we are almost out of time. So I will say thank you to everyone who came today, and we hope to see you next time.
And happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.